Welcome and thanks for joining me again today. We have a great topic. We're going to talk about alignment from the lens of communication and collaboration, specifically in the B2B space, specifically from strategy and product marketing and how that affects an organization and ways to make it better. So before I introduce my two guests and they tell you a little bit about themselves, I just wanted to talk about two statistics that popped out to me, and then I want you guys to keep this on the back of your mind as you listen to these ladies provide insight. Okay, the first is a survey conducted by Demand Metrics. They said organizations with a strong alignment between marketing, product management, and sales achieve an average of 32% annual revenue growth compared to 7% for companies with poor alignment. That's a big difference. The second statistic I found, which I thought was very interesting, was conducted by CSO Insights. They found that organizations with good sales, marketing alignment, and marketing alignment achieved a 27% higher win rate, because they said when marketing, product management, and sales collaborated effectively, the sales team are better equipped with the right resources and information, leading to improved sales enablement. So that's like the basis of why we're having this conversation. So now let's get to our great guests. These ladies work for the same organization, so this is going to be a unique conversation because they work together, and we're going to talk about their collaboration and communication. So why don't we start with you, Lindsey? If you could tell us a little bit about you and the organization, and then we'll jump over to Kristen.
Certainly. Thanks for having me, Kat. So Lindsey Klein, Chief Strategy Officer at QGenda. QGenda is a company that really serves healthcare through workforce optimization. So we started as a provider scheduling company. We're now the largest provider scheduling company pretty much in the world. We schedule almost 70% of the US provider market. And based on kind of needs of the industry, we have expanded pretty broadly outside of just provider scheduling. So QGenda's ultimate objective is to kind of sit between the HR system and the patient information system, the EHR, and kind of serve everything in between. Who's working, where, when, how, why. So that's really our objective. A little bit more about my background, and then I'll turn it over to Kristen. So I've been in healthcare IT solutions for the last 20 plus years, serving hospitals and providers through best practice optimization, and really have moved kind of up the funnel. So started in customer success, then in sales, then moved into kind of new product launches, and ultimately into strategy.
Awesome. So you went through the whole gambit. That's great. Kristen.
And thanks for having me. My name's Wylie. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing at QGenda. And I think product marketing can mean a lot of different things to different people based on what organization you're at in that moment. But my role here at QGenda is really about building out our positioning and messaging, and then taking that to create assets for demand gen, building out our sales tools, sales training, and then also have some comms functions scattered in there too, supporting our reference program, our public relations, our social media. So it's a little bit of everything to make sure that QGenda is positioned as effectively as possible externally.
Yes, I always say that product, because people get product management and product marketing confused sometimes, and product management listens and understands what's happening in the market, and product marketing takes that information and pushes that outward. So this way you'll have the sales enablement tools and information. So a lot of times folks get that mixed up, and they're very different, and they do very different and important functions.
Complementary.
Fact, I would say
complementary. That's what it is.
Yeah,
I love it.
My team is kind of that product management piece, right? So We do other things as well, but I think that's why this conversation is really valuable, because of that point. Like, people call them different things and they get them confused, and sometimes they're muddled and sometimes they're separate. And so it can be really confusing.
Yeah, and when you understand it, you understand why the flow has to be such that there's a lot more communication and collaboration. So having said that, let me, if we talk about what's your view, and we'll start with you, Lindsey, what's your view with collaboration between marketing and strategy and I guess product management? And what's your view on collaboration and strategy and how that fits in your organization, I suppose?
I would say the relationship between whatever you call it, product management, strategy, and marketing is probably the single most important relationship an organization can foster. You nailed it in your assessment, Kat. You know, we should understand the vision for where the company is going, and we should be listening for market feedback on that vision and our products. And ultimately, we are the front lines of a lot of that feedback, but we have to do a good job to help the marketing team really be in lockstep with that knowledge, because they are the ones who unlock that knowledge for our internal resources. So, you know, the marketing team translates all of that information that we're gathering into really thoughtful and digestible collateral, campaigns, training. And so, you know, I think that is, in a perfect world, kind of how the relationship works.
Awesome. And Kristen, from your perspective, what's the collaboration?
Yeah, I think that the way that Lindsey phrased it, I'm of the same mindset. It's really that product marketing is capturing the insights from strategy and sharing it across the broader marketing organization. I kind of see us as like my team as the liaison between strategy and the rest of the marketing group, all of the different marketing functions. And I think it's really important that marketing be involved early, like upfront and often, because I think sometimes at some organizations, folks are thinking, like, whether it's product management or strategy, just as Lindsey said, whatever you want to call that function, that is listening to the customer need, forming the insights, figuring out what our approach to the market's going to be. They're like, well, you know, it's not fully baked yet, so we'll just wait until, you know, we have an asset or a deliverable that marketing needs to polish up and make pretty for us. And then you're really losing the value that a product marketing team can bring to the table, because we're hearing and we're understanding this is what the market is doing, and this is how we're planning to respond. And it's our jobs, really. We're the question askers. We're like, so why are you going to do that? How are we going to say that? So what is your plan here? And by us probing, we're forcing strategy to optimize our kind of go-to-market plan. And then we can take that and build out a consistent message to move forward with. I think the worst thing, though, is so you want to get marketing involved up front, but please don't involve marketing and then just kind of let us go off and we're building out messages and don't let us know that things changed. Like so it's early and often. Don't forget the often part. Keep us in the loop so that everybody stays on the same page.
So a couple of things, and this may be getting to some of your questions you're going to ask next. But one, Kristen and I were really lucky that we came on board at about the same time. And I think very much, you know, up front, we were kind of figuring this out, but very much at the beginning kind of established, how are we going to work together to take new products to market, and having a plan before, well in advance of launch, and what information is strategy bringing, and then what's the expectation of marketing and other functions that are involved. And I would say, you know, one thing that I've maybe not done as well in the past that I think we've worked on a lot together is, how do we continue to teach marketing what we're learning, because then the collateral they're producing is going to be even better. And ultimately, we're not going to need to make as many edits. We still want to be involved, but then we can continue going further and further upstream. And I was just reading something from Kristen's team this morning, and I was like, man, they literally, like, I have so little feedback on the content that was produced now compared to where we were 6 months ago.
That's amazing. You know, I love the statement you said about questions, asking questions, because I think that some people think questions are like a pushback, when actually it's to, and I guess I'll let you explain it, because I have my thoughts on it. Because the more you ask questions, I think it's not about questioning someone's intent. It's about questioning to understand, so this way you can then produce better information.
Yeah, certainly. So when I'm asking Lindsey or members of her team a question, it's not to probe or to question their intent. What I mean is, like, it's so that we can better understand, how are you approaching this? Why are we doing this way? And it's not to be critical. It's more of just to say, help me understand this, because by capturing the insights from strategy, it's all about what you started off by saying, the collaboration and the communication. Questions are a key component of that. If we can pull the information that our strategy team has, especially like someone like Lindsey, who has this tremendous background and knowledge of the space. If I don't ask questions of her and capture what's just common in the back of her mind, then I won't reflect that in our messaging. And so it's just it's part of the communication process, is to ask questions. And then hopefully the questions make people think differently, make people think of, oh, I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. And it's kind of a two-way communication.
And sometimes you're asking the question in the way that we're going to get the question when we go out to the market. And so it almost helps the team realign around, oh, gosh, I didn't think of it that way, but that's the question a CNO is going to ask, or a CHRO is going to ask. And now we're anticipating that. So I think it's so important to have that partnership, because they're going to highlight blind spots that my team may have, and vice versa.
Yeah, and I think it also allows the team, or I should say product management, marketing teams, to do exactly what you were saying, Lindsey, in terms of, there might be a question out there that you didn't even think about, that's what, because that's what, when people are buying, they're trying to solve a problem, right? So they're asking questions. So if you don't dive into all that stuff and put it somehow articulated in your content, you're missing an opportunity. And that comes from those questions and talking, and it brings a lot of enlightenment. So I love this. You're exactly right. I love the whole concept of questioning, and I like that you're thinking marketing early plus often, because there are changes, and that is the worst. You've gone off, you're doing what you're gonna do, and you're like, ta-da, it's done, and they're like,
actually
change. Actually, that's like the worst word. But okay, so let's go into that. So we talked about why marketing and the collaboration is important. So what happens, because you Lindsey, you indicated that you guys both came in early, so you were able to create this collaboration, but what happens when it falls apart? Like, what, not that it did in your organization, but what happens when you don't have these two pieces? And we kind of touched on it a little bit. I think that many times we have these different departments, each with their own goals and their own focus, and it's almost like they're on different runways or different tracks. And I think it creates tension that prevents the ample flow of information. So what are your thoughts on when there's no alignment and folks are just, how many, you end up doing things over and over? At least that's my experience.
I have a couple of quick thoughts before I jump over to Lindsey. The first thing is, I think if you don't have that communication and collaboration, the biggest thing is that your messaging is going to be wrong. And you're just going to go to market with something that wasn't at all what the organization intended, because marketing does have that voice to be able to project to the market, whether it's through our content or demand gen activities, or through what sales is telling prospects. So you have to communicate to make sure you have the right message. Or just product strategy is singing one song over here, and marketing is singing a different song over here. Sales is saying something completely different because you haven't coordinated your messaging, and then that makes a horrible customer experience.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned the word tension, but the word that I had in my mind was just like a repercussion of not having good communication and collaboration between your teams. Is there's potential for I was thinking of it as friction, internal friction.
Mhm.
So like Lindsey said, we're really lucky that we came on at the same time and had a similar mindset of like, hey, these teams need to gel together. But I've worked at other organizations where there hasn't been that kind of collaboration. And it actually, it from a product marketing perspective, it causes really kind of a disengagement of the product marketing person from the organization as a whole, because you don't feel empowered to do your job, and you're being held accountable for creating this asset or creating this sales tool. And you're like, I don't know what to say in this sales tool that I'm trying to create because I don't have the information that I need. Or you just kind of BS it, and you know that it's going to be wrong anyway as you bring it to market. So it causes this huge challenge, and it's negative both for the customer, so overall for the business. But the way that I'm looking at it as a manager of a small team is it also can impact your team dynamics and how they approach work and their happiness as a member of your team. So those are kind of where my head's at, of lack of communication and collaboration. What do you think, Lindsey?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. I think the thing is also recognizing that even in a world where, I'd say two things. One thing I don't always do as well as I should is like get to know my marketing counterparts and what their backgrounds and strengths are. And I think recognizing none of us came up in these boxes, right? Like in some of Kristen's previous roles, she did things that fall more in my team's realm. And in some of my previous roles, I did things that fall more in her team's realm. And so kind of getting on the same page with each other about what each other likes to do, wants to do, is good at, sees their weaknesses as, and kind of drawing our own lines versus assuming where the lines exist. I think that's been important and a thing that we continue to work on together. Tension will come up even with the best intentions and the best plans. And so we as leaders often, I think, have to reiterate, we win together and we lose together. Like there is never a world where my team is succeeding and Kristen's team is failing, or Kristen's team is succeeding and my team is failing. And so I think when we see those tension points, just reiterating that and making it feel like it's all shared, everything is shared accountability, shared successes, shared failures. So I would just say like, that's really important. And it's something you have to work at. Like it's not one and done, it's constant and when things are going bad or not as well as you would like, I'd say it's even more important to kind of dig in and on those things.
That's awesome. That's a great way to think about it. Because I've seen organizations, and I've been to sales events where the folks are talking about their marketing counterparts with so much I want to say almost almost animosity in terms of, but you're thinking, but at the same time, they're having these meetings and they're like, we need, content, and we need PowerPoints, and we need this information and that information. And all that comes from marketing. It doesn't come from a vacuum. And I'm saying, well, you guys have to, if there's something you're missing or not, feeling that you've all got to talk together, because it's just so important. And I love that we all win together. That's the mindset that changes that. If you think we all win together, then we all have to be on the same page and communicating, even when, because I think tension is good personally. I think a little tension, because that's the questions around why. When someone says, I want to do, or we should do whatever, and someone asks why, that is a little tension, because then, the person has to either explain it, or maybe I didn't think about it that way. And as long as it's coming from a place of we all are going to win, it changes that. So that's a great dynamic you guys have. So one of the things I think we can jump to is, you kind of mentioned it, Lindsey, a little bit, where you got something from Chris's team where it was almost like you had no additional insight to add because it was on point. But, do you have any other examples about how, when it's working well, how it just kind of helps you get from, we've got this new product and we want to get it out to market. How does that kind of flow when things are working well?
Yeah, I mean, I would say when things are working well, one of the key parts to any product launch or any growth initiative is a thoughtful marketing plan, right? Who are we targeting? Why are we targeting them? What's the messaging? What's compelling? And Kristen's point is so well made about early and often. So I would say, we launched a product at the very end of the year last year. We had a great plan. I think we did all the right things. And then we were out in the market for the last, 5 months, and we've learned a ton. And the ability of that shared learning to be constant. So we're changing and updating, because the assets we created initially in the messaging, we've now not overhauled it completely, but definitely made some sizable tweaks, and have learned there are other personas that are important that we maybe didn't anticipate early. And so to me, especially on newer products or growth products, it is so important. I would say mature products too, but as you're in the market learning, those first 5 meetings, 10 meetings, 20 meetings, that feedback has to make its way back to the marketing team in as close to real time as possible, because then I think those adjustments can be made versus you wait 6 months, you assess why you're not having the success you want, and you realize our messaging is off. We're not reaching the right people. So I would say that is a crystallization of when it's working well, that's the way the process should function.
I think
Kristen,
we did two things that come to mind of like how, working with Lindsey, we built out a structure that enables us to have the greatest chance of things working out well. Like Lindsey said, it's not always going to be sunshine and roses, but what are the things that we as an organization put in place so that Lindsey's team and my team are collaborating and communicating effectively? There's a bunch of different things, but I think the first thing is a weekly meeting, and everyone just takes a weekly meeting for granted. They're so dismissive of, oh yeah, we're gonna have a weekly check-in. But I think that at first our weekly check-ins were just like, okay, but why is everyone still not on the same page? So Lindsey and I had to take a step back, and we were like, okay, we have to add some structure to this. Like what is the purpose behind the weekly meeting? And so we just said, all right, it has to be a two-way communication. It can't just be one group talking at the other group, but the structure behind it is, these are my 3 top priorities. This is really what I'm working on, so you know where I'm coming from. And that's, what product marketing and representing the marketing team as a whole is saying. And then on the strategy side, it's like, here's the three, big projects that I'm working on. And then it's like, what insight do I want to share with you? So from a marketing perspective, maybe it's the webinar was a super success, or, oh, that webinar really fell flat. And so let's talk about why and how we need to change that. And we're getting insights from strategy that's saying, hey, I was in this customer call. What I heard was XYZ feedback that you guys really need to incorporate into our future assets. So number one is don't take communication for granted. Sometimes it needs to have some structure. And the second thing I wanted to share was I was so thrilled when I saw Lindsey's note this morning saying that the asset that we'd built out, it was an important asset for us. We were so thrilled that it was on target. But I also think that sometimes people in my role or a similar role to mine potentially fear or intentionally avoid sending things to their strategy counterparts for review and approval, because they're like, I just want to get it out. And I know they're just going to change things anyway. And I don't even need that feedback because I know that it's good enough as it is. So I just think that at least in our organization, as a common courtesy, you send your content over to the strategy team. You do your best effort to give them ample time to review it. That's just courtesy. And then, they're always going to have feedback. Lindsey and her team know that my team isn't always going to be able to implement that feedback. If it's factually incorrect, of course, we're obligated to do that. But if you have an opinion on like style or tone, we might be like, oh, I hear you, but that's not really what we're trying to do here. Like, trust our expertise from a marketing perspective, just as we trust your expertise from a product and a strategic approach perspective. So I would just counsel people that you're going to win more in the long run in marketing if you just trust your strategy leads and you give them the opportunity to collaborate with you. It's going to make the process actually shorter in the long run if you get their feedback up front.
Yeah, I totally agree. I do think those last 2 points are really valuable, though. One, on my team side, we have to be immediately responsive, right? So, hey, if we're getting the opportunity to weigh in and we take a week, that may not be very helpful. And so we have to, if we really want to provide insights, we have to do it in a timely manner. And I totally agree with what Kristen said. The way the feedback from a team like mine should be framed is, here is my thought or opinion, or here's an idea, but we have to trust that then the marketing team makes the ultimate call, right? And that's what they're the best at, is what's the right language, what's going to resonate. But I think especially as both teams are learning, I just came back from a conference. And so when I reviewed that content this morning, as good as it was, I was like, here's a theme I heard at the conference that maybe isn't fully baked in the content that we may just want to think about bringing out. It's totally up to their team whether they leverage that or not, but that's a real world scenario where I think our feedback can be helpful.
If there's an organization you're stepping into, or an organization comes to you and says, we're having trouble aligning our teams and they're just not working. What are some key tips? And you might have touched on them again, but if you had to distill it down to just like 3 quick tips from the strategic point of view and from the product marketing point of view in terms of working together, that would be great. Maybe we'll start with you, Kristen, if you have just 3 tips to share.
Sure.
And go from there.
So I was thinking about tips or suggestions. It's going to be different for every individual. Again, like, what does product marketing mean in your organization? What does the structure look like with strategy? Maybe it's called industry marketing, or maybe it's just product management. But if you're like just starting out, I think the most important thing for product marketing is to stop just churning out volume for the sake of just blasting out content. Just stop and make sure that you are building your content with a purpose. And the way that you get your purpose is by collaborating with your strategy peers, because they are going to provide you with, here's what we're trying to accomplish. This is the approach that we're trying to build out here. And then as you're thinking about it, I guess I'm just, maybe I'm a little bit overly focused on structure, but think about how you want to build out things like your templates for positioning and messaging across all of your products. So as your organization scales, you have a consistent way of communicating. So we have some folks on our team, if there's a camaraderie there between strategy and product marketing, you've got lots of informal conversation channels, that's awesome. But you also need to have some formal structure so that there's consistency across all of the different players on the two teams. And you've got just kind of this foundation of how you're going to work together to build out the best messaging. And the second tip, I think, is ensure that you are investing in the relationship with not just product strategy. I think it's just as important. I know it's not the focus for this conversation, but I just think it's so important to invest in the relationship with product strategy and sales. The way that I think that like investment is that you earn their trust. So a lot of people, look at marketing of like, I need you to pretty up my slide. I need you just to, write the language for the press release. I'm going to tell you what to say, and you can address the grammar and the punctuation. But really, to earn their trust, you have to know the product. You have to know the industry. You have to know the competition. When you're asking questions, you need to ask smart questions, that show that you actually, know what you're talking about. And it's a valuable use of their time to think through and answer your questions. So I think that you earn their trust and then you listen to their insights. If Lindsey's going to take her time to give me feedback, I'm going to listen to that and I'm going to, make note of it, and I'm going to see how I can incorporate that moving forward. Same thing with sales. Again, doesn't mean you always have to say yes to everything, but make sure you're listening. And then the last thing, you hit on it a little bit earlier. I forget how you phrased it. I should have written it down, but it was about the tip that I was bringing to the table is kind of like when you're thinking about things, approach it from the customer perspective as you're building out your assets. It's about like, don't talk about features and functions, because especially like the core product management people, they get so excited. That's what they're so focused on, is this particular feature. And frame it out in a way as you're building out your asset that it's a results-driven communication. And strategy is the folks that are going to help you do that successfully, because that's what they're focused on, is what's the need I'm trying to solve. This feature enables it. But anyway, my point is stop, look at every asset that you're building. Is this delivered from a customer-centered approach, not from a organization out approach, but from a customer in focus, a results-driven focus. So those are kind of my three thoughts.
Yeah, so I wrote down a couple of things. I think one thing we did at the very beginning that has served us really well. So there's a methodology called pragmatic, which a lot of marketers are very familiar with. And we basically laid out the pragmatic framework and we said, what is Lindsey's team responsible for? What is Kristen's team responsible for? And then what is our product team responsible for? And I think we've referenced that a lot, just as we've thought about kind of, okay, where do the lines end, and kind of, is this working or not working? It shouldn't be your black and white, but it's a good guidepost, I think. So I'd say that's one tip I would have, is whether it's pragmatic or something else, have a framework for how the teams are going to work and work together.
I actually just used that today, Lindsey. Yesterday, I onboarded a new person on my team and I pulled up the framework, and it just made it so much easier to tell her, this is what we do. This is what product marketing is responsible for. And like you said, it's not black and white, but it's just a nice guide. You're right. I think that's a great recommendation.
Yep. The weekly meetings, I think, are really valuable. And what I would say, the adjustment we made, as Kristen noted earlier, was, what is my team bringing to those meetings? What kind of, so the framework for what kind of updates should my team be bringing? And then what kind of updates should Kristen's team be bringing? Kristen's team added one additional layer where weekly they send an update to a broader group beyond just the one-on-one pairs to say, here's the assets that we finished, here's in development, here's, you know, what maybe is kind of lower on the priority list, just for visibility. Because I think early on, like my team would make a request or say there was a need, and then maybe we didn't understand like why it wasn't prioritized. But now I think Kristen's team's established, here's how we prioritize the creation of assets. And this is something I see work well or really badly at organizations, is some teams think as soon as I ask for something, it should be at the top of the list and I should always get it, right? But there's a methodology. And so I think establishing what those principles are for how priorities are decided, there's not ever enough marketing and design resources to go around. So everything will never get done. So I'd say that's another tip. And then the last thing is, we have every other month, a broader alignment meeting that my team organizes, and it brings together product strategy, marketing, sales, customer experience, product, and some others, just to align on what's going on, what are we hearing, what's working, what's not working. And it's such a great level set. And I always leave those meetings with, oh, someone said something I didn't really realize, or, hey, maybe we're not going in the right direction over here and we need to learn a little bit more. So then my team goes and digs in more heavily on that competitor or market need. So I would just say it's also thinking about that broader sphere of people you need to work with, partner with, influence, support, and making sure there's opportunities for them to be heard as well.
That's awesome. I like that last point because, you know, when you get different departments together, they each view the customer from a different perspective, depending on where the customer is in the buyer's journey or the client journey. And the same thing with the industry. And I think when you I love that, when you bring them all together, you will hear things that you missed, not because you're not, you know, in tune. It's just that you don't deal with the industry or the client at that level that somebody else does. And when you put all those pieces together, those are great aha moments that help you think about the product different, think about the, you know, what you're going to put together. And so that's I like that. And what did you call that? You said a broader alignment meeting?
Yeah, we call them product alignment meetings. So it's kind of all the stakeholders for that specific product being brought into a meeting together, and everyone owns a part. So marketing gives an update, my team gives an update, customer experience gives, so everyone kind of has a role. And then there's a lot of room for discussion about like what is and isn't going well.
That's awesome. I think that we've uncovered a lot of great insight here about, you know, communication and collaboration in order to provide, to help teams become more aligned. And, you know, you can see by your conversation, because, you know, I started with those two stats, and you can see why, when it's working right, it helps improve ultimately what every organization wants. Yes, there's the altruistic point of whatever your product is, but you're a business, and so you want as many people to buy your product and services, and so you can grow as a company. And when you're doing it right, like the way you guys have put your processes together and made that conscious effort to be aligned, I think it just that's a good way to help a lot of people better understand alignment. So that was some great information. I know a lot of people will take back, and I'm going to make sure that I outline a few bullets when I put it in my description, because I think that there's some great nuggets of information that people can walk away with. Now, one question I always ask, so with regards to your favorite marketing books, I'd love to know what your favorites are, or favorite, and why. Why does it mean so much to you? So I'll start with you, Lindsey.
Okay. So I'll give you one that's more marketing, and then a couple that are other books that are related. So anything by Robert Cialdini. He has a book called Persuasion that I love. It sits on my desk, but he just came out with a couple others. It's basically about like, how do you make people feel compelled to do something, to buy something, to change, right? And I think that's what we're all kind of fighting at times, is the resistance to change. And how do we really persuade people even without knowing that we're persuading them? Kind of that's kind of the crux of his message in a lot of his books. The other book, and it's funny, so Kristen and I compared notes in advance, and she's going to recommend a book that is very similar to a book that I love, but different. The one I love is called Creativity Inc. It is also about the inception of Pixar, and she's going to talk about a book she loves about the inception of Pixar as well. So I just think that story is so cool, the Pixar story. And like everyone said, this is going to fail miserably. Why are you doing this? And it's so neat. And then the last thing is, anyone who knows me knows that I absolutely love Adam Grant. Adam Grant is an industrial psychologist. He is, yes, exactly. So I talk about Adam Grant a lot. He just recently came out with a new book called Originals, which I have not read yet, but is on my desk. I'm obsessed with, I listen to all of his podcasts. I follow him on LinkedIn. So he's my number one recommended read.
Awesome.
My thoughts, maybe everyone's already read it, but I think that Start With Why, if you've only watched the video around that, you're only getting a teeny tiny piece of the broader perspective of how you think about your organization, how you present your products. For a product marketer, that's like a core of what you do and how you approach what you do. The Best Story Wins by Matthew Lunn is the Pixar book. We actually had the opportunity at QGenda to have the author come to our sales kickoff and talk about like how he approaches storytelling. And he literally outlines, you can never get like a step-by-step, here's exactly how you write well, or how you tell a good story, but he comes pretty close in giving you like a step-by-step guide to that. There's this book called Resonate by Nancy Duarte. It's also about storytelling, but more about how you frame a story, and how you can visually present the story. We were fortunate again at QGenda to have Duarte, which is it was Nancy Duarte who founded it, but like we had our corporate story to tell. Well, how do we tell that story? What's the best way? We think we have lots of great things to bring to market, but they helped us to kind of pull together all the different thoughts of our executive leadership team and present it out. But there is a specific structure to the most successful way to give a presentation. And so they literally walked us through, okay, we know who you are. Here's how you tell it, and it's, going through, they read the book, they outline everything in the book. And then I did have to just mention this book. So when I was interviewing for this job, Lindsey had joined just a couple of weeks before me. So I had the opportunity to interview with her. And I don't know why it came up in conversation, but she was like, oh, this Adam Grant. And, I'm completely oblivious to who Adam Grant is. I'm like, oh my God, I've never heard of this guy before. I should really know who this is. And so she made the recommendation of this book, Think Again. And absolutely, I was like, well, if she suggested I should go read it. And it was such a great recommendation. It's all about, like, what I took away from it was all about, similar to a point we made earlier, it's about surround yourself with people who might not think the same way as you, so that you can question what you think and why you think it. And that's not a bad thing. Don't just know something because you know it, like question why you know it and be open to other perspectives. And so Lindsey kind of opened my eyes to this whole like other world of Adam Grant, because he's an awesome writer. It was an entertaining as well as informative read. So definitely, the new book that she recommended, we got to get on that too.
First of all, I'm going to try to sneak into your next sales meeting because apparently you have the best speakers coming in. So if you just see me in the back, I'm just sneaking in. But thank you so much. This was a great, great conversation. And I think what I liked most about it was seeing how you, the thought process behind each one of the steps around collaboration and communication, and that knowing that it's always evolving. It's not just one and done and magically it's going to work forever. It's this constant state of looking back and finding ways to improve. So thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate you both. You guys have great insights, and I know that everyone who will be listening to this will enjoy what you have to share. So thanks so much.
Great, thank you.
you.